Hey everybody, welcome to Python 101. In this course, we're going to be talking about Python. We're going to be writing our own code, writing our own programs, and I'm very excited to start this course with you guys. And today we're going to be focusing just on chapter 2, and let's begin. Here are all of the topics that we're going to cover today. I will probably split this video into parts, and yeah, let's start. Let's do a little throwback to PLG 101 when we covered how to design our program, because every single program before it's written has to be designed to ensure that your code is writable, to ensure that you're properly writing your code to solve whatever problem is in front of you, and to make sure that everything is going to be working correctly and logically. Let's have a little recap about the program development cycle. So first of all, first step that we do is we're going to design our program. After that, we're going to write our code, obviously. Then after that, we're going to correct any syntax errors if there are any. After that, we're going to test our program. And after that, as a last step, we're going to correct any logic errors that have been found during the execution of our code. A little reminder about what pseudocode is. Pseudocode is just fake code. There is no syntax rule in pseudocode. It is not meant to be compiled or executed. Pseudocode is just code written in informal language, just so anybody who can look at your code will understand what that code is supposed to do. It's usually just done using a informal language, which is just English, which is plain old basic English, and numbers. Another reminder about flowcharts. Let's remember what those are. Flowcharts are just diagrams. They're going to show whatever steps your program is taking in order. Now, the ovals are your terminal symbols. Then parallelograms are going to be either input or output symbols. Then rectangles are the internal processes symbols. And all of your symbols are connected by arrows. And let me show you what it looks like in case you forgot. But this is what it looks like. This is a flowchart diagram for a program that calculates the amount of pay a worker gets. So this chapter has a lot of just simple reminders of how your program should work. So let's look back into what computer does during execution of your program. So your computer will certainly receive some input, then it's going to do something with that input, for example, a mathematical calculation, or it's going to transform your string into something, and then it's going to produce some output for you. So it's going to either display something on your screen or send information to some file, stuff like that. Now let's look how we can display information using Python. So in Python it's fairly simple. All you need to do is just type print. You can see right here we have print. This function will display whatever's inside of the parentheses and inside of the quotation marks on your screen. Just fairly simple. Print, open parentheses, quotation mark, whatever you want to print. In this case, it's hello world. You close your quotations and you close your parentheses, and that way you can display whatever you want on the screen. Another reminder, we covered modules in our PLD 101. However, in Python, these modules are called functions. And as we all know, that function is just some piece of code that's already been pre-written, and that's just going to perform some sort of action for you in your program. Now, an argument is whatever data you give to that function. In the example with the print function, the argument was hello world. In Python, there is nothing complicated. The statements are executed from top to bottom. As you can see here, we have programming is fun, 3 statements, and they're going to be executed one by one. This one's going to be executed first, second, and third. This is why you have an output like this. Programming is fun, each on each line. Now, just real quick, a string is a sequence of characters that is used as data. A string literal is a string that is inside of your code of your program, and that string literal has to be enclosed in either single or double quotes in Python. However, they can also be enclosed in triple quotes, but I do not recommend doing that. Just stick with single or double quote marks. Now, comments are just there to explain your code to whoever is going to look at it, because in the work field, you're going to be working with other people, so you will have to comment your code, and you will have to just kind of explain what your code is doing for people who do not work on your code. And in Python, they start with a pound character. Now, variable is something that represents just a name for a value that you want to store in your memory. So variable is just something that stores whatever data you wanted to store. Now, assignment statement is how we actually assign data to our variable. In this case, this general format statement right here, we have variable equals some sort of expression. For example, we have variable age that is equal to 29. Assignment operator is our equal sign. So this is how you will assign values. 29 is a value of variable age. This is just a couple more examples. In this case, 75 is assigned to a variable temperature, 87.99 is assigned to the variable cost, and string Monty is assigned to your name variable. In Python, you can only use your variable if your variable has a value assigned to it. So in Python, you cannot just use a variable that doesn't have anything stored in it. However, the cool thing about Python is that you do not have to put a data type, explicitly tell the computer about the data type that you want to be using. And in Java, as some of you may know, in Java it's different. In Java, you have to assign a certain data type to each variable that you want to use. However, in Python, it's not like that. You just put a name of your variable and whatever you want to assign to it. Very simple. You can also assign values to multiple variables in a single statement. In this case, we are assigning 0, 1, and 2 right here to variables x, y, and z. So this whole statement equals to x equals 1, y equals, oh, my bad, x equals 0, y equals 1, and z equals 2. So this one statement is the same as the 3 statements x equals 0, y equals 1, z equals 2. This is called a multiple assignment, and the only thing that you need to pay attention to is that you can see that the values are separated by commas as well as variables. Variables are also separated by commas. So if you want to make a multiple assignment, you have to separate your values and variables with commas. There are some rules for naming your variables in Python, such as your variable cannot be a Python keyword, such as print or just some reserved words in Python. Now, it cannot contain any spaces. If you want to put a space in between, you can use an underscore. It looks just like a space. Now, your first character has to be either a letter or an underscore. And after that, you can use only letters, digits, or underscores. And of course, your variable names are case sensitive. So if you have a word that is lowercase assigned to some value, and you have a variable that is uppercase, those two are completely different. Oh, and the most important one, your variable name should reflect its use. And what that means is that whatever variable name you provide, it has to reflect what it's being used for. So for example, if you want to calculate, I don't know, the amount of money a person gets paid at a job, the variable should be called gross pay or should be called monthly pay, stuff like that. So it cannot be named something random. So make sure that you're naming your variables with purpose. Whenever you're using print, you can pass multiple arguments to it in Python and print multiple things with a single call to print. You just need to separate them by a comma. And if you separate them by comma, those are going to be separated by a space automatically when they are displayed on the screen. As I told you before, the variables can refer to a data of any kind of type, and you can switch them while your program is running. So what that means is that you can change the data type of your variable during the execution of your program. Python allows you to do that. Let's look at the data types that Python gives us. So obviously int stands for integer. You're familiar with that. Float stands for any real number, which is any decimal number. Now, str is used for storing strings in memory in Python. And then numeric literal is any number that is written into your program. Some third operation, obviously, they're going to behave differently depending on what data type they're assigned to. Now you can reassign a variable to a different data type. You can see here we have a value 99 right here assigned to x. However, we can also get that x and assign take me to your leader. Take me to your leader is a string, but it doesn't matter. In Python, it's possible to reassign the data types on the go. Here's an example. We have a variable name that we equal to keyword input, and then in quotation marks we have what is your name. So this statement will display the string what is your name. It's going to read that input and store whatever user types. It's going to store it in the variable name. So fairly simple, nothing too complicated, nothing like Java, where you need to write loads of code before you can even read input from the user. So it's very simple. Just put input and whatever prompt you want to ask your user. Input will always return a string unless you specify a conversion. So that's also fairly simple. All you have to do is just put what data type you want your input to have. In this case, integer or float. This is going to convert whatever you have into integer or a float. And let me give an example of that. Look at this. We have a variable called number that is equal to an input that we're asking the user to enter a number. However, we want it to be an integer, right? Because we don't want it to be a string if we want to perform some calculations with it. In this case, we just put int in front of it, and that's going to store an integer that user typed into our variable called number. Here is another one, another great example. We have enter your score. So we're asking a user to enter your score, enter their score, and we're converting it to a float. So nothing too complicated. You just put whatever conversion you wanted to have, in this case float, and the other case it was int. Obviously, you can perform calculations in Python because it wouldn't be a good programming language if you couldn't. It's all the same as in PLD 101, as I showed you. The only thing that you need to remember that one slash operator is going to perform a floating point division. So if you want your division to be precise, you have to use one slash, but double slash is going to perform an integer division. So any positive results are going to be truncated and any negative are going to be rounded away from 0. Here are all of the operators that exist in Java. You can pause to read this. You're fairly familiar with these. These are nothing new to you. Another reminder about the one slash and double slash. You can also pause to read this. Now let's talk about operator precedence. And operator precedence works the same way in Python as it does in algebra. So any operations that are in parentheses are going to be performed before anything else. Then the second order is any exponents that you have in your expression. The third one is going to be multiplication, division, and remainder, which is a percent sign. And then the fourth, the last one, is going to be the addition and subtraction. And if it has a higher precedence, it's going to be performed first. Exponent operator, this is how it works. It's going to raise a number to a certain power. So you put a double star. Let me show you. You put a double star, and it's going to take your x and raise it to a number to a power of whatever y has as a number. Remainder is a modulus operator. If you do not remember how modulus work, I have a separate video on that on our YouTube channel. So just go into PLD 101 playlist and look at the modulus operator. Whenever you're converting math formulas to your programming statements in Python, you have to be very careful because sometimes you may have to add some multiplication operators or something that's different, that looks different than in your math formula, and you might need to have to insert some sort of parentheses somewhere in your programming statement. The data type from any of your math operation is going to be heavily dependent on what data type you're using. So if it's two integer values, it's going to return an integer. If it's two floating values, you're going to return a float. However, if it's an integer and a float, integer is going to be temporarily converted to a float as you're doing your math operation, and then the result is going to be still a float. That is called a mixed type expression. Now, if your math expression is way too long, if you have a really long statement, you can break it down. And you just break it down by putting a backwards slash at the end of your line. Nothing too fancy, very simple. Put a backward slash, go to the next line, continue writing on the next line. However, anything that's inside of the parentheses can be broken down without that backwards slash character. As you can see here, we have a print. Right here, we have a print statement. It's enclosed in parentheses as a print function does, but then you can just put a comma and print whatever you want without the backwards slash character. So we don't need it here. The same thing was a total right here. We are performing some math calculations. However, since our expression is inside of the parentheses, we do not have to put a backward slash character. We just need to put whatever character we want to use. In this case is a plus sign.